Hey guys, Ryan Earnhardt here from CreativeSoundLab.tv. Well, today we're going to be changing the polar patterns after the fact on a pair of overheads set up in the Glyn Johns method. You know, the Glyn Johns over the years, I've kind of said, maybe don't try it. I've even talked about hating the Glyn Johns, and to be honest, it's actually not that easy to get right. There's a lot of different kind of subtleties and things that can change, and there's other methods that are actually quite a bit easier. However, in today's experiment, this is kind of the next level audio nerdery here. We're going to be changing the polar patterns of a pair of Glyn Johns mics and really hearing what the polar pattern does to the sound, not only in tone, but how the microphones actually pick up drums that are somewhat near it, and really how we can shape the stereo image of the drum kit. Okay, so I have a session pulled up here. This was just from the live stream, and if you want to catch the live stream, you can watch me doing this. Just make sure to hit that notification bell by the subscribe button. So subscribe to Creative Sound Lab and make sure to be notified. And when I go live, you will be able to hang out and watch me do these experiments live. Okay, so I have the two Lewitt mics set up here. The LCT 640 TS stands for Twin System. So there's actually two channels per mic. And both those channels come in right here. So we have overhead left and overhead left back. And we just hard pan them. We bust them together. And then this plugin, it's a free download over at the Lewitt website. It understands that hard left is the front mic, hard right is the back mic. We can actually then sweep between the polar patterns. Insanely cool, right? I mean, this is really kicking it up a notch from just going in, adjusting the mic. We can actually experiment in real time and see what the difference are of the polar patterns. So we're going to do that today. We're going to experiment with not just one mic, and I've done this on vocal before, but I want to experiment with a pair of mics on a drum kit. And of course, the Glyn Johns, we have a kind of a right side mic that's pretty low to the kit by the floor tom. So that actually will be kind of important. We're going to hear it. So I'll go ahead and let's just put it to cardioid, both mics. And here's kind of a basic mix. I have some outboard going, various things. I have kick going through here. Then I have the overheads going through the 903s. The M-House Studios, that's a snare drum. And the top, the successor, that's actually drum bus. So I know it says overhead stereo bus. I just didn't label it, but that's actually the whole mix. So yeah, let's check out this basic test here, and then I'll break it down with the polar patterns. That was with cardioid, okay, for the over mic and the side mic by the floor tom. Here is just the overheads, and I'll go ahead and just do it raw. So here is the raw track of just the two Lewitt mics. So you can hear as I'm kind of shifting through the different polar patterns, I'm getting actually a pretty different sound. If I were to just solo just one, so you can hear it on just one. Let's say the top mic, right? So this is positioned right over the snare and the high tom. So you can hear an Omni there. That's actually catching up. It's capturing and catching the room, right? But here in cardioid, it's only looking down towards the kit. This is our typical, microphone pattern. This is probably the most common microphone pattern, I guess. But then we can go to figure 8, which is kind of like a ribbon, right? So we have our range of mics. What's really interesting is we actually could swap. So instead of cardioid looking down, we have 2 channels. We could easily just, rearrange and say, you know what? We faced the mic the wrong direction. Let's just go the other way. So it's not just between these, but we can also say, you know what? Let's just get everything but the drums, right? So this was everything but the room and typical cardioid. But then we can listen to only the back mic and get everything but the drums and only the room. So check this out. I'll start off in Omni first. So really what we have is Omni is basically the addition of both cardioids here. So we have a cardioid looking down at the kit and cardioid looking away from the kit. And when you combine them both, we get omnidirectional. If we flip one of the cardioids in the polarity, then what do we get? We get figure 8, just like a ribbon mic. Okay? So it's actually pretty simple concepts that are creating these polar patterns. And this graphic is awfully cool. I mean, it's super nice to be able to just visually see what you're doing with the mic. But you could very easily take the fader, and if we're in a mono mix, we could take the fader and we could raise and lower the fader to create our different polar patterns. So in the case of this, I'll just turn off all the plugins. We'll go to a mono mix for just this microphone, which is over the kit. In fact, I'll turn off everything here just to make sure. And then what we're going to do, I'll zero out the faders here. And this, as positioned here, is omnidirectional. So both microphones are on. This here is figure 8. Both microphones are on, but the back one, the polarity is flipped. And then what we have is variations thereof. So only the front mic is just one mic, okay? And then if we do about -10 or so, then we get our wide cardioid and our hypercardioid, just like that. So about -10 down on the back, you get hypercardioid and the wide cardioid. So that's about how to get basically your landmark polar patterns. Is you go -10 on the fader and you flip polarity and you get your subcardioid, or technically, wide cardioid and hypercardioid. So check this out. I'll start out with cardioid first. So there we go. That's cardioid going into Omni. And here's cardioid going into figure 8. Okay, now I can create a hypercardioid by going -10, flip the polarity. Okay, and if we wanted to use the plugin for this, we just hard pan, we zero these out, and we turn on the polarizer, and here we go. We could do hypercardioid right here. So the same test we just did, we started out in cardioid going to omni. And then cardioid going to figure 8. So once again, we could do it both ways. We're literally just mixing two channels together, okay? It seems complicated, but it's really not. It's kind of like the top and bottom of a snare drum. We have two channels for the same thing, same instrument. We're doing the same kind of thing. We have an overhead mic, we have two channels. And based on how we mix those channels, we get a different flavor. Of course, this has to do with the polar pattern, so it seems really complicated. But again, this is just kind of a flavor, okay? Now, what's cool about this is that, you know, this is a pickup pattern, right? This is how it's picking up the room and how it's, you know, really flavoring the sound of the overhead. I tend to like more of the omni kind of sound in the overhead. It just has a really nice, warm sound to it. Condensers in figure 8 almost sound kind of funny to me, but I tend to go towards the omni side of things. What's cool about this is we can really dial in the fullness of that floor tom. You know, what actually I'm listening for is the low mids of that snare drum. So I'm listening right in at, you know, probably 200, 400 hertz, just kind of right in this area. Let me see if I can play that for you. So that kind of stuff. And what I'm doing is I'm just using this as somewhat of an EQ to balance out the left and right to get that snare, to get the fullness of the snare even down the middle. See there, it's pulling to the right. So it's obviously the wrong direction, right? Let's try it again. Yeah, so I think I like the fullness of the snare. I'm basically mixing snare. I like it kind of like this. I remember in the live stream we kind of settled on something that wasn't exactly the same for each mic, but it was slightly different. So on the overhead mic, we had something like a wide cardioid, and then on the side mic, we had almost an omni polar pattern. And depending on what we wanted, we could blend and we could balance these two mics, not using EQ, but using the balance of the front and back of that microphone or the two channels in the mic. In this case, we're using the polar pattern instead of EQ. Pretty cool. So this is kind of what we played around with. And of course, we have this, we have the panning, we go going through the MS, you know, matrix and all that. that sounds really cool. So, you know, we could go for Omni if we really wanted to. Let's try that. Yeah, but I keep going back to more of a tighter pattern. You know, it's more on the Omni side of things for sure. But I keep going towards a little bit tighter than Omni. Let's just hear figure 8, see what it sounds like. Just amazing what a difference that makes. You know, it's the same microphone, it's just a different polar pattern. Let's have a listen to just the tom, the lower mic that is closer to that floor tom, and just have a listen to how it's rejecting and or picking up that floor tom. I think I did some one hits somewhere in here. Just amazing what a difference in sound that is, right? Wow. So, going back to kind of a fuller mix, and with the beat, let's see what we got. Yeah, so a lot of fun, a lot of fun. This is, again, like I said, kind of really nerdy stuff for audio. But we've heard this, the Lewitt LCT 640TS. Gotta make sure you get the name right because there's other 640s that Lewitt makes. But we've heard the 640 in other cases, like vocal. But being able to shift the polar patterns for a drum overhead, we haven't quite tried yet. And I've been wanting to make this video for a while. I finally settled on maybe like a Glyn Johns type thing because we get the benefit of hearing how it affects that low floor tom. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions about this, or if you have any ideas of what I should try the Lewitts on next. I've actually been pleasantly surprised every time I put up these Lewitts. For overheads in the live stream, I was actually very impressed by how smooth the top end was. You know, it wasn't bright, but it wasn't dark either. It just was the perfect amount of high end and clarity for drum overheads. So, I'd love to know if you have any questions on this. We covered a lot of ground today, and we kind of hinted at some cool kind of mid-side technique that I think I want to explore further. But anyways, let me know what you thought of this video. Talk to you soon.